Hey, welcome to the lesson 1.1 class video. We're going to work through this lesson and see how it goes. So again, the 1.1 is called Solving Simple Equations. Generally, our opener will be here. This is something we're going to make use of during our Google Meet session, so I'm not going to cover it in our video. The learning target for this one is I can solve linear equations using addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So just as a reminder, just to make sure we're all on the same page, again, addition, plus sign, subtraction, the minus sign, multiplication, there's a couple different signs. We could use a dot, which I'll be using for the most part. We could use a small x, or we could have numbers like right next to each other, so or in like parentheses. So we could have 4 parentheses 2 parentheses. So there's lots of ways to do multiplication. And then division down here, again, classical symbol is the line with the numerator and denominator above and below it. You also have a slash. There are a few other ways as well, and people might want to use those. But the big thing to think about here is, what does the word solve mean? And that's going to be something you should keep in mind as we go throughout today. Alright, so for these ones we want to solve these ones. In this case, solving is going to mean that we want to get the variable by itself. So in this case, we have x minus 3 equals negative 5. So I have a minus 3 here. If I want to get rid of minus 3, I'm going to need to add 3 to both sides. We add it to both sides because then it doesn't really change the equation. It just moves parts around. So we would be left with x equals negative 2. For our next example, we have 0.9 equals y plus 2.8. Here we have the variables on the right side. There's nothing wrong with that. So we have a plus 2.8. We want to get rid of this plus 2.8. Therefore, we should go minus 2.8 on both sides. Okay. That's going to leave us with y equals negative 1.9. Okay. Again, we're going to continue on with this. That first one was adding and subtracting. This one's going to be multiplying and dividing. So for this first one here, we see that we have negative n over 5, or negative n divided by 5, equals negative 3. So in this case, we actually want to multiply both sides by negative 5. So multiply by negative 5 and multiply by negative 5. This is going to, because it was dividing, it's not going to be multiplying, so now this becomes n equals positive 15. Okay. Our next one has pi times x. Again, these two things are next to each other, so it's going to be times. So pi times x equals negative 2 times pi. Well, in this case, because we have a pi on both sides, we're actually going to divide pi out. And within that, we would now be left over with just simply x equals negative 2. For our last one, we have 1.3 times z. Again, number and variable next to each other means we're going to multiply it. So 1.3 times z equals 5.2. We're going to need to divide on both sides here by 1.3. And we'd be left with z equals 4. Alright, so for this one we're not actually solving it, we actually already have the answer down here. I just want to talk through it. Sometimes you're going to see word problems, and you want to think about what is the problem actually asking, and what have they given us. So in this problem it says Usain Bolt won the 200-meter dash with a time of 19.32 seconds. Write and solve an equation to find his average speed to the nearest hundredth of a second. Okay. So we're going to use a distance formula in this case. D equals rate times time. So how far you go is how fast you're going times the time it takes you to get there. Well, using what we know here, and I'm actually going to switch this to highlighter. Well, we know that the distance of 200 comes from because it was a 200-meter dash. We also know that his time was 19.32 seconds. That's how we filled in both of those values. So now we're left over with 200 equals 19.32 times r. Again, these two things are multiplied by each other because they're next to each other. We divide, so it cancels out. So we get 200 divided by 19.32 equals 10.35. Again, this squiggly line is approximate because it's probably not exactly right on, but because we were asked to find the nearest hundredth of an inch, it's no longer exactly equal as it's an approximation. Likewise, this problem, also we are just looking at how do they solve it. They already have the answer. We know the answer is it fell by 58 degrees. But sometimes in life, by looking at good examples, you can figure out good things and figure out how they did work. So this problem says, on January 22nd, 1943, the temperature in Spearfish, South Dakota, fell 54 degrees at 9 a.m. to -4 degrees at 9:27 a.m. So we're just trying to figure out how many degrees did this actually fall, because sometimes when you're using positives and negatives, when it comes to temperature, it can be tough to know what actually happened. So first thing you want to put is we know the final temperature. The final temperature is the temperature at 9:27. This was -4. We also know the starting temperature. Starting temperature was 54. 54 minus the drop. So the drop is going to tell us how far down did it go. That's why we have this set up as -4 equals 54 minus t. There's other ways to solve this, but this is just the way that the book is showing us. So we're just talking through it. We have -4 equals 54 minus t. Here, because it was a positive 54, we're actually going to subtract 54 on both sides, so we get -58. Because both sides are a negative, we can divide by a negative on both sides, and we get t equals 58. How this looks on a graph is we started over here at 54, and in the 27 minutes we dropped 58 degrees to -4. One crazy storm. Okay. We could use a similar problem like this if we're trying to figure out how to work this problem. So if you thought you had a balance in your checking of 68. So again, we're starting at 68. When your bank statement arrives, you realize you forgot to record a check. The statement you actually have now only has 26. Write and solve an equation to find the amount of money you forgot to record. So you could do this a few different ways. Again, you thought you had $68, so I'm just going to write it out here. So you thought you had $68. You really only had $26, meaning you had to subtract some amount for that check. I'm going to call it a C. Okay, so we have 68 minus C equals 26. You can actually do this in a few different ways. I would probably rearrange it like this. I would say let's do plus the C, so we would get 26 plus C equals 68. Then subtract the 26. So C equals 68 minus 26. Some of you may have actually set up the problem this way, and that's a-okay. I'm just trying to show you a way how the book did it. 68 minus 26 would be 42. Meaning the amount of the check that we have would be a $42 check. Okay. Our homework for this lesson is going to be on pages 8 through 10. It's going to be numbers 1 through 4, 6 through 38, just the evens, 39 through 48, 50, 57 through 65. This is 35 problems. It'll take you about 20 to 25 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes to finish this one. Have fun.